Hey, good morning. Today's devotion comes out of Proverbs chapter 10, verse 4. It reads like this: A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. Now, on the face of it, a slack hand, I think we all know that means being lazy. And we've probably all had our moments or our seasons even of being lazy. We know we should be doing something, but we just don't do it. Sometimes it looks like procrastination, or Jordan in high school, whatever it looks like. We should be working, but we're not, right? So we have this responsibility to someone or something that we're on the hook for, but we're just not following through. And then in the second part of this verse, it says, the hand of the diligent makes one rich. And I think what we can do is we're going to take the first part and the second part, and we're going to build guide rails for our work, because we can take it too far in either direction, in laziness or in hyper productivity in work. So we're going to take both of those together. And ultimately, we're going to use God as the model for work, because he shows us the perfect path and plan. But what's interesting is this word slack, the root word, doesn't simply mean lazy, right? A slack hand, we're not doing what we should be doing. But what slack here, it also means deserting or abandoning responsibility, or even betraying responsibility. Isn't that interesting? That there's almost this moral quality to having a slack hand, is that it's not simply that, oh, I'm putting something off until later, or I'm not doing what I should be, or, I'm on the job, but I'm kind of hiding out on Facebook. There's this study from the UK I came across a couple months ago, and on average, workers spent like 2 hours and 16 minutes a day actually working. And they spend a ton of time on social media, a ton of time doing other things. And so we see we're responsible for some kind of work, but we're not doing it. And what Solomon is showing us in today's verse is that it's not simply just this amoral kind of slackness that, oh, you're going to miss out on some reward, so it's really on you. There's actually a deeper truth here, and that we are betraying responsibility that we have committed to. We are abandoning or deserting something that our integrity would call us to. And this like really confronts me, because whether it's deadlines you promise, or work that you're getting compensated for, or any number of things that we commit ourselves to, when we don't follow through, we're actually abandoning or betraying our own word. And this is so wild on two levels, because suddenly we see laziness in this new light, that it doesn't just affect us, it actually has a moral quality. And when we look at God, how does God follow through on his commitments, on his responsibilities? Does he ever desert them? Does he ever betray them? Does he ever abandon them? Does he work with a slack hand? Absolutely not. God always follows through on his commandments or on his promises, and this is called integrity, right? The idea of integrity is to be fully integrated. It's like a building. Okay, if a building isn't fully integrated, it's going to fall down on your head, and it's not a good way to build something. Like you need, it needs to be true and fit all together and be fully integrated throughout its entire structure. Our lives being fully integrated and having integrity means that we're the same person behind closed doors as we are when people are watching us. And so there's this interesting moral quality to it, and I think we can look at God's model for work that he gives us. So in Proverbs chapter 3, it says, the word says, I believe it's verse 19, that by wisdom God laid the foundations of the earth. So let's go back to the garden. Let's go back to creation in Genesis 1. How did God work? How did he model work? Was he slack, or did he create a brilliant, beautiful universe? Flinging the stars out from his fingertips, setting the boundaries of the ocean. There's this diligence that we see. And so the next part of this verse is, the hand of the diligent makes one rich. And diligence here means this absolute thoroughness. It means finishing what you start. It means bringing it to completion and not abandoning it midway through. God works so diligently to create something incredible, to create beings that are so incredible, and to create people in his own image and likeness. And he didn't stop short, right? He created something magnificent and majestic. So the first thing we need to see is God models work that isn't lazy. When it's time to work, God works. However, here's where we can take this in the wrong direction, especially as Americans. We have this hyper productivity culture, especially if you own a business or you're in a high capacity leadership position, or if you're just like real type A and you want to accomplish things. Sometimes we take verses like this and we just imagine that we need to work all the time and constantly burn the candle at both ends. But God doesn't model that either. What does he do? He works for 6 days. He brings it to completeness. He diligently finishes, and then he rests. He rests on the seventh day. So here's what God shows us as a model for work. Over here, when it's time to work, work. Don't be lazy. Don't procrastinate. Get it done. Be diligent. Have integrity. Over here, though, don't burn yourself out, because when it's time to rest, rest. Don't make work an idol. Don't make work and productivity part of your identity. That's something I struggle with deeply. Owning a business, I see my output as my worth and my value. And so when I'm not performing at the level I have in my head, whether it's realistic or not, I really struggle with some identity issues. And this becomes an idol, right? So when it's time to work, work. When it's time to rest, rest. And if you struggle to rest, one thing I would encourage you to do is to implement a definition of done. We see God, after 6 days, he knew that it was complete. He said it was good because he knew what done looked like when he was creating the universe. He knew what done looked like. Do you know what done looks like? So that you can actually set your mind at ease. And sometimes we don't. We just have this crazy to-do list where nothing gets totally finished and we keep pushing things off until the next day. So just on a practical note, be like God, work like him. When it's time to work, work, but when it's time to rest, rest. And the only way for us to rest sometimes, if we're hyper productivity people, is to have a definition of what done looks like. What does that day 6 look like at the end of your day, at the end of your week, at the end of your quarter? Know what done looks like so you can rest. And so ultimately, we don't want to abandon or betray the work we've committed ourselves to, because God doesn't. And he's diligent and he finishes what he starts. But neither do we want to burn ourselves out and work and never stop, because that's not the model God gives us either. When it's time to work, work. When it's time to rest, rest. Blessings today.